do like to see your faces. We're on ready to go now, Nicola.
Yeah,
brilliant. That's fantastic.
In.
So just to give a very big welcome to everybody joining us today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Mark Raymond. I'm the development manager for Barbering for VTCT, and my colleague is...
Hi, good morning, everybody. I am Nicola Steinbach, and I'm the development manager for hairdressing at VTCT Skills, and thank you all for joining us. So, big agenda today, lots to get through, really excited. And if you're new to the collective, the objective is that every month, Mark and I bring to you industry updates, insights, inspiration from people all across the hairdressing and the barbering sector who have joined us each month to kind of share their skills and insight for where they're at in the industry just now, and today is no exception to that. So we are joined by two fantastic guest speakers today. Our first guest speaker, who you'll hear from shortly, is Anthony Laban, who you may have heard of, who runs the Noble Barber podcast, amongst many other things. We are also joined by Kelly Furnival from KF Hair Education. I'll also be giving you an update on what's happening out there in the world of competitions and awards with the AHT. We'll be talking to you with the latest updates on the Collective Live Tour, because I think we've done 9 events so far. We've got another couple to announce. And then finally, we will be telling you when we're doing this all over again. So yeah, sit back and enjoy a very packed agenda for today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nicola. So our first guest today is Anthony Laban, and we'd like to give a big welcome to Anthony. Anthony has been in the industry for over 30 years. He owns barbershops in London, Laban Barbershops. He's very much involved in education and is a great supporter, particularly of the apprenticeship schemes. He's a voice for the barbering industry and community, and he runs probably the most popular podcast for barbering here in the UK, which is the Noble Barber, which has really, if you get the chance to have a look at it, we will be putting details in. You'll see that he's had some of the top names in barbering and education, and has covered a wide variety of subjects. So big welcome to you, Anthony. How are you today?
Yeah, morning, Mark. Yeah, very good. Thanks for the invite. Nice to be here.
Brilliant. Yeah. So what we're going to be doing is with the collective, we sometimes have demonstrations, we have presentations, and we also have interviews. And that's what we wanted to kind of do with you today, Anthony. So just kind of kick everything off a bit, could you just give us like a little bit of a background about yourself, and how you got into, barbering, and maybe kind of just talk through some of the things that you've done in the industry?
Yeah, so I started off, I think next year is probably 40 years ago, I started my apprenticeship. And I did my apprenticeship with Vidas Sassoons as a hairdresser, qualified and worked with Sassoons, and did fashion shows and across London, New York and Milan, which was great. Did a lot of magazine work. Was always much more a cutter than anything else, and found that I always had a good male clientele. And so having had setting up my first store, my first salon in, 91, which was a huge site. We had kind of 50 staff in there, and, a traditional kind of unisex salon, I guess. I closed that down in 2011. Partially my idea, partially the banks and the crash and everything that was going on at the time, but quite relieved to be away from that. And then in 2013, I set up my new brand, And our brand has 2 salons and 2 barbershops. And with the barbershops, really, it was it felt like a return to the fold that we had a great male clientele. We have the barbershops right next door to the salon. And so majority, it tends to be guys in one door and ladies in the other. It's not utterly gender um, separated, but it tends to be that way. And that's it. So we have the 2 barbershops now and 2 salons, all within about a mile of each other in Clapham, London.
That's brilliant. So Anthony, can you just I know you talked about the stuff that you did when you were at Sassoon's, but what are the kind of things that you've been involved in, in your kind of career in the barbering world? Can you talk us through some of those things?
Yeah, I guess the big bit with the barbering side of things has been we really pushed to bring in wet shave. So we've worked with a couple of really good people, to certainly Mark Sproston, the shave doctor, to really kind of bring shaving into the fore. And we're part of that very first wave of a more upmarket, top end men's grooming. But we kept in a very traditional barber world. Along the way, we have entered and been part of a variety of the kind of shows and barber competitions. And then obviously run our apprenticeships and train some of our own staff along the way too.
Brilliant. And you just mentioned apprenticeships there, and I know that you're very passionate about training and education. Can you talk us through, what that looks like at the Laban salons and barbershop?
Yeah, so I've got some really excellent trainers. I was a trainer in a previous life with Sassoon's, and feel that education's always been part of it. One of my stores now is completely home trained, which is really great. And I have someone who joined us as an apprentice at 16 is running the place and is a fantastic manager there. So I've certainly seen that kind of growth through. More recently, we found that we needed to revamp our apprenticeships to make it more interactive. We felt that the generation coming in were much more easily bored and needed to be stimulated. So we set about the idea of making sure that there are wins at least weekly, if not daily, that make them feel they're getting somewhere. So along with kind of documenting what their work is and pushing it through the kind of company social media, we've really kind of made sure what we call our 72-week program really helps the gang kind of tick off, see where they're progressing to, and know that week by week that they're moving forward, rather than, which can happen with barbershop, but with training, that a week or 2 or 3 can slip, and maybe models didn't come in, and maybe training wasn't done, and maybe the store got busy, and all those kind of things that when it's run by the store can get missed, even by really good companies. By putting that properly into our apprentices' hands, they've got every right to call us out if we're finding that's not happening. We've generally found that when we're looking at it, that they're, week 30, they've hit week 30 by week 18, and then we really feel like we're getting it right. But it's been really good having this kind of, I don't know, burning candle in the corner, so that we can be checked and measured. And I think that's been the big win and the big change for us as a store, as well as a training company. We only train our own staff. We don't bring anyone else in, but we do take our training side seriously. It makes us accountable to our apprentices, and I like that they can physically point at a sheet of paper and call us out. So I think that's been our biggest learn over the last kind of 4 or 5 years of running apprentices.
One of the things, Anthony, that we particularly hear within the barbering world is that if you take on an apprentice in barbering, for example, there isn't really much for them to do in terms of what they do in the day on the barbershop floor. I mean, how do you kind of, because your apprenticeship schemes sound very successful, so how do you kind of counteract that?
Well, at present, we're kind of sharing our apprentices across the salon and in the barbering. We don't have a standalone barber apprentice at present. We're working at it, and we want someone, but it's trying to make it work for that, for very much the reasons you're saying. We found the more successful avenues have been people who have already done some training, and we're finding that we're meeting a lot of maybe certainly not school leavers but older trainees who've either been through a college system or gone through a private school, been doing courses. Lockdown gave us access to an awful lot of home taught barbers. And so I think when they're at that stage, we tend, what we've previously done is embrace the fact that there may be 100 haircuts in. And we then gauge from the number of haircuts they're working at. So if they've come from, I don't know, London School of Barbering, say, where we know that they've done 100 haircuts over their 12 weeks, that we'll start them very quickly on model price haircuts, and they will spend at least a day or so a week actually cutting the one after the other regularly, alongside watching and assisting not just the barbers but also the running of the company. So they will be taking bills for the guys. They will be obviously making cups of coffee, dealing with customer service. I'm not quite so keen on the apprentices being solely responsible for cleaning up. I think a barber at any age should be able to know how to use a broom. If I can sweep up, I tend to believe everyone else can as well. But there's obviously, just the cleaning and straightening up of the store. So I think you do need with barbers to get them more occupied. There's not the same level of jobs and support staff duties that you have in a hair salon. But equally, I just don't find we're encountering an awful lot of 16, 17, 18-year-olds straight from school who just know nothing and just have an interest in barbering. We're tending to find their second, third careers, or they've already invested in themselves at college or at a training provider. And so they're kind of halfway there. I mean, we tend to work on a good quality barber needs kind of 750 to 1,000 flying hours. And that's kind of how we operate on our apprentices. So for us, if we can get them in the cockpit and get them going, them being behind a chair cutting, even if they're cutting very cheap haircuts or mates rates on models, and we're very open that they're models, we find they're getting their flying hours early and we can integrate them into the senior team.
Brilliant. So Anthony, we do get some students and some learners that join us on the collective. So if there are some students that are with us today and they would want to get into barbering and to be successful in it, what would you be saying to them that they need to do?
I mean, the long and short of barbering and hairdressing, and anyone watching this that is working in it knows that it's graft. I mean, it's I think the insta social world shows the glamour and the fun of messing around or doing fashion shows. I mean, a lot of it is graft. And I think with anyone wanting to get into barbering, they need to recognise and look at it as a full career rather than the insta snatches of I'm going to be doing 2 footballers a week for £800 a haircut and then go home. The reality is you're behind the chair 8 hours a day and you're cutting a wide variety of people. For me, that's half the fun. I think if anyone's wanting to get into and finding it, I think the research now is something that's easily done but really important, that you should find the barber shop that you associate with, that you would feel you would want to work in, and build a list of those people, and then go and talk to them. I've spoken to, via the podcast, we've spoken to so many people. And I've spoken to guys who've gone in and been getting their hair cut in the shop that they would like to work in, and built a relationship there that way. And I felt that was inspiring levels of research that they're really getting up and walking around. And I know in a social world we can sit on the couch and flick, but I think actually walking around, seeing the journey that would be for work, seeing what the shop's like, seeing the people in there, and getting to know them works. A very long time ago, I wanted to work for a company in Paris that I really liked and I was really interested in. They did not want to employ me at all. My French is appalling and I was a stroppy Londoner. And it took me three or 4 weeks of just standing outside his shop every morning when he turned up, with me saying, "You're going to take me on then? Have you got any jobs? You're going to let me be with you?" And eventually he got so fed up that a nice level of swearing in French, and he agreed that I could work in his shop. He didn't pay me, but I worked in his shop for 3 months and gained an amazing experience. And that led me to be doing a huge amount of catwalk and fashion shows, which was something I wanted to do at the time. So I think the research is really vital. And I think physically going and meeting these guys is really important. There's such a variety of barbershops out there, like such a smorgasbord of choice, that I think you need to find something that fits your tribe. And if you can see yourself working there, and you kind of connect with the people that are working there and going there, then I think you're probably going to find your career is really good. That's how I found, Sassoons. I worked in Knightsbridge an awful lot of my career. I worked in Kensington, and they were all stores that I really kind of aspired to be part of that crew. And not all of them wanted me. It does take that kind of persistence. And I think it's not meant to be easy. And I think if you can just sign up, send in an email and you start, then you're going in blind, and therefore don't be surprised if you trip over.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Anthony, there are a lot of challenges at the moment within the barbering industry, isn't there? Would you like to kind of highlight, what some of those are, and kind of what you're doing as a business owner to kind of, work through those challenges?
Yeah, it is really, really difficult. I don't think the recent budget changes that come in 6 weeks' time is making life any easier. I saw the first thing this morning, there's a report by the CBI commissioned by the Salon Owners Association, and then they're saying that essentially by 2027 there will be 93% reduction in amount of apprentices in barbershops, and I think that's very based on the fact that minimum wage, and certainly in London where you've got to go above minimum wage, that the salaries are very high. Even with apprenticeships, it's expensive. The changes to national insurance have made it expensive. It's a real challenge. We've certainly seen big salon groups that are reducing apprentices' hours down to 30 hours a week to try and save money and keep a program going. I do think it's very difficult. I think we tend to operate by making sure that the our staff are charging and cutting, even if it's a very modified price, to try and keep it that they're covering their own costs. And that's how we've managed to do it as a business. But it is a challenge, and I think it's vital in barbering, as an apprentice, or as a person in training, that I would always hark back that you have to be employed, and I try and find companies that are employing more than just the apprentice, because I think it'll give you a bit of a stable beginning as to how you're going to grow. And it's obviously then falls to the storekeeper's interest to make you profitable, rather than if you're going on to some very convoluted self-employed system when you don't really have the skills and you don't have the clientele, then most of that expense is going to fall to you. And I always get concerned when people that are coming into the industry are left with that level of fear. I think you should make sure you look for companies and push for companies to employ you.
Yeah, excellent. And I just wonder what your thoughts are, because I mean, for a number of years, the industry, both in hairdressing and barbering, really have been pushing for regulation. Do you think that we will ever see the day when that happens?
No. In the short word, no. I mean, I don't know if there's a great appetite for it. Having spoken to a lot of people, I think there's been voluntary regulations previously, which I think everyone feels was an earner, that people were paying in an annual fee and getting very little back. And I think that was a real shame. I think if you look at countries that are regulated, that are held up with great esteem, like the US, their regulations really is a health and cleanliness certificate rather than anything else. I think the problem with regulation is it will always end up with a fairly low bar, because whoever's running the regulation won't be great high quality barbers. There'll be civil servants or there'll be office people that will check that you tick a section of boxes and that you've supplied a bit of paper, and that's that. I think that the issue with barbering falls much more down to government and council, and how shops, studios, how spaces are being regulated as businesses rather than the industry being regulated as an industry. I think creatives, it's difficult, with any artistry, it tends to find itself very difficult to regulate.
Excellent, thank you. So, Anthony, you run the Noble Barber podcast, and it is a very popular podcast. You've had some, lots of different guests on. Can you talk us a little bit through about the podcast and about some of the guests that you've had on?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's been a joy in the fact that we're now in our second year. We've got a really good kind of barber and barber owner following, which is amazing. We're getting great viewership and good feedback from the industry, which is lovely. We set it up quite late, I guess. I mean, looking around, there was a kind of burst of hairdressing podcasts that started emerging with I think Dom Lehane opened up in 2017, so I'm a mere toddler by those standards. But I felt really that the barbering industry was being very viewed through this kind of social media filter, and I thought it was really easy and accepted that barbers and barbershops should show what an amazing rock and roll, fabulous life they had. And I own barbershops, and it's not like that at all. And I just felt that I found over the years, 35 years of a business owner, that there's some really difficult, there's some really fantastic, there's some really depressing, there's some really exciting. But overall, I think it's quite lonely being a business owner in our industry. And I felt that by doing a podcast that pushed the reality of the community, and it's the noble barber because we don't suffer no bull. And we didn't want it to be an advertising shiny, isn't it fabulous? We wanted people to be open and honest. It is fabulous, but there are tough bits that go with it. And I felt if I was a young barber opening up and I see lots of them doing it, I felt it would be hard. And I felt that if I could talk to them and if I could talk to other barbers and other people in the industry and get them to admit it's hard, to admit that they'd failed along the way and they dusted up and succeeded. We could talk about how stressful it is. We could talk about problems that we come across, that these younger barber companies that start up would have a resource to kind of go, it's not just me, because I've always gone out and spoken to other hairdressers. I've never been one of these barbers or hairdressers to answer the question, how are you? Yes, I'm very busy. I've always preferred to be really honest, because I know if I'm quiet, you're quiet. And if you're telling me you're busy, you're lying. But when you're starting out, it's very easy to feel like you're failing. And so the podcast really started off with this idea of being a bit of a support system to young barber companies, which I kind of wished I'd had that when I was blindly setting my stuff up. It's kind of grown. I've then discovered the width and breadth of our industry, that I've met incredible people who are doing great stuff for men's mental health, that are doing amazing things with rehabilitation of prisoners in prisoners for offenders. We've met CEOs of product companies who are open about how difficult retail really is in our industry. I've spoken to guys who've got very famous, very well-known, huge chains who have said they've had to shut down branches and they found it really tough. And I've spoken to award-winning session stylists who say, yeah, it's a bitch sitting in a cold airport in Berlin waiting for a connection while you realise that your 6-year-old's missing. You're missing your 6-year-old's birthday. So we've kind of covered the reality, I think, and that's what I'm really proud of. That every conversation I've had feedback from the guests saying, I'm really surprised what we spoke about and I'm really pleased we did it. And most of the feedback I've had is that we've held on to our integrity. And I quite like being transparent and I quite like being open and honest. And I think our industry deserves that. But main way it's portrayed has a filter on it. So I guess that was why we did it.
Brilliant. And just one final question, Anthony. How would, because we get a lot of lecturers obviously on the collective online, how would you say that lecturers in a very positive way could work really well? Have you got any suggestions with industry?
Sure. I think it's a difficult seesaw, because I do see that the educators do get a hiding from a lot of barbering companies, and I speak to a lot of barbering companies, and I get a lot of feedback that can be quite negative. But equally, I've spoken to a lot of very good quality barbers who all say much the same thing, that it would be amazing to be more involved. And I would love to see more of the people that I've spoken to actually get invited into the colleges and the training centres. I certainly see it as, to some extent, the fellowship has certainly been involved with colleges. I saw the guys from Barber Bash were at Crawley College last week. It's there, and I think it's always lovely when it's kind of done with a fanfare and a lovely banner saying who's doing it, and it's a competition and it's all very exciting. But the reality is day by day, and I think if we could find that the colleges came out and spoke to the industry and spoke to the barbers in their locale and built a rapport and a relationship, it would work. I think apprentices will need to be shared around barbershops. I'm talking with half a dozen mates at the moment about our barber apprentices moving between each of our shops, so the onus isn't all on one person. And I think the colleges and the training providers would find having that input from the local community to their spaces be really, really rewarding, and it would probably help break down this kind of noise that, the noisiest keyboard warriors are the ones that want to talk about what's gone wrong and what they hate. They also tend to be the ones that aren't very involved. And the ones that are quiet are maybe just feeling neglected and don't see how they can get involved. I know we're all busy. I'm doing this and I'm just about to run off and get back behind the chair and do my 11 o'clock. So I understand we're busy. And so I think waiting for, and I've heard it a lot, that barbers should approach colleges and should offer their services. I think the win would be if it was done the other way around, that, that head of barbering in these places and head of hairdressing in these places physically did the walk and looked at companies that they wanted to be involved with, and actually went in, made appointments, had a chat and built a relationship. And I think if we could knock down a few walls and build a few bridges, we would silence a little bit of the hate and find that we could create something quite exciting, rather than all just shrugging our shoulders saying apprenticeships are dead.
Yeah, brilliant. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us today. Some excellent points. We will be putting your contact details in the chat, and we will also be putting a link to the Noble Barber, so people can join you for the podcast. But thank you so much for that really great insight into not only education and what colleges can do, but also, into what's really happening in the barber industry. Thank you very much.
No worries, Mark. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Please do have a little listen to the Noble Barber podcast. It's appreciated. Lovely to see you all. Take care.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye. Fantastic. Really great to have Anthony with us, and we got a comment. Thank you, Anthony. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Nicola, who is going to introduce our next guest.
Okay, thank you, Mark. That was so interesting. I can see from the screen that we've got some students in the call today, which is fantastic. So I think there was some real interesting nuggets of real positive information that as a student, the future of this industry. Hopefully you were taking lots of notes there. Okay, so now it's time to move on to our second guest speaker of the day, and I am super excited about introducing Kelly. Kelly and I met, I think, last year at Salon International. Kelly was on stage doing varying things, and I saw her on all the different stands, and we have been chatting ever since about the opportunity to bring some CPD education to the collective program. So Kelly is a fantastic educator and co-founder of Solstice Hair Studio in Manchester. I'm going to start by asking you, Kelly, to say hello and tell everybody just a little bit about yourself, please. And I can't hear you, Kelly. Let's just check. You're not on mute. There we are. That's it.
Yeah, morning everyone. Thanks so much for having me. That was really, really interesting to sit and listen to Anthony speaking. So I feel like I've got a job to do now. Just to give you all a little bit of a background about me, I am a VTCT qualified assessor in hairdressing. I am a behind the chair hairdresser, so I work full time. Aside from doing the education, I am what I would call an in the pit hairdresser. I'm on the front line. Everything that I teach comes from a place that is salon based. So as much as I am all about stage work and getting myself out there in terms of doing things in the industry, when it all comes back to it, everything that I've built within my education platform is all about working behind the chair and making a profit from it. And just to give you a bit of a background, so I've been in the industry for about 27 years. I'm going to say that really quickly because we don't like to talk about how many years I've been doing it. I started out as a nail technician after having my first child, and I went into hairdressing quite late. So I was 26 when I started training to be a hairdresser, and I found it really difficult to, number one, get a job, a paid job, because I was too old to be on an apprentice wage. And then when I did find that I was employed, I was thrown in the pit and expected to pull my weight. And there was a lot of skills that I didn't have, that I was, you know, when you're in the kitchen and your client comes in and your boss comes in and says, your client sat there and you're thinking, oh my God, like, I don't even know where to start with this. So this is where all of this has come from. Everything that I'm going to teach you today on this demo comes from that young 26-year-old bricking it in the kitchen on a daily basis. So I try to make sure that everything I teach is commercial, it's time smart, it's cost effective, it's things that you can use across most clients. So it's not fancy pants sectioning patterns that only work for bespoke work. This is going to be time smart stuff that you can use behind the chair straight away. And it's really good as well if you're just starting out. So it's going to give you some really, really solid foundations. Now, obviously, from working behind the chair, I launched education in 2019 purely out of a need for hairdressers wanting extra training in business, in time smart techniques. And it genuinely came from Facebook groups, from people reaching out after I'd shared my work saying, do you teach this stuff? And I was like, no, but I can. And I went into education blind. I had no clue what I was doing. I set my first class up in 2019 and had 10 students, never doing anything like that before. And it's just flown since. So that's it. I'm really excited to show you what's next. If you have got any questions, please wait till the end of the session and pop them in the chat, and I'll try and answer as many as I can. If any of you have got your phones with you, take photographs, because I've done some head sheets that are going to be shown in part of this demo. So make sure you take some photographs of the screens. And then if anybody wants those sectioning patterns and things afterwards, I can actually share those as a PDF document for you as well.
Wow. So Kelly, you did all of the things that I was going to say there. So that's fantastic. Really excited for this. So just to explain to everybody how this is going to work, because we introduced this concept into the online meetings last month and it worked very well. Kelly has actually taken the time to pre-record a demonstration, which we will in a second show you that video. And then throughout that video, Kelly is going to narrate over it. And obviously, if at any point, as Kelly says, anything comes up that you want more elaboration on, then we can pause the video. But ideally, if we go through the video and Kelly talks all the way through it, and then at the end, Kelly will be able to answer questions. So without further ado, if technology works, Mark, can you please go to the video, please? And over to you, Kelly.
Great. So we're going to work on commercial time smart foiling, and my whole concept behind this is using a less is more approach, so working smart and hard for our clients. So we're going to work on 12 foils today. This is the actual model's hair that I did. So I did this with a simple root application and 12 foils. Now, if we can just pause this just here, just so I can go over today's agenda. Okay, so we're going to focus on enhancing efficiency in the salon with a workshop on time smart foiling for the everyday commercial hairdresser, because that's what this is all about. The session will highlight, number one, techniques for purposeful foil placement that significantly reduce application times, allowing stylists to maintain artistic freedom and offer a personalized service. Number two, the approach emphasizes a less is more approach. So I'm not talking working cheap, I'm talking about working smart. So we're going to showcase how strategic color techniques can be tailored to individual clients while minimizing lengthy application times and cost of color heavy appointments. You can press play again now. Now this not only streamlines the workflow, but it's also going to help boosting profit margins and optimizing time and resources. Okay, So hopefully, as this video goes on, we should first of all see the first slide. And this is going to be your sectioning pattern for your first sections. Maybe a little break on this. So I will say as well, whilst this is playing, I work on my sectioning pattern. I tend to use on every single client that comes in for colour. I've really niched down on the type of colour that I'm doing now. I work on triangular sectioning patterns, and I am not reinventing the wheel with this one. These sectioning patterns have been around forever, but what you will find is that using these sectioning patterns and mapping these out before you start your job on that client's head will really help to kind of give you an idea and see where you need to put the colour. So let's press pause for a second. So this is Lara. Lara has really resistant white hair. I would say she's about 75% resistant white hair. It's very, very fragile around the hairline, as you can see. So I really have to watch what I'm doing with this. So the first thing that I do when I'm thinking about applying her colour is, where am I going to apply that colour around her hairline to make sure that, number one, I'm going to get maximum impact, but number two, she's still going to have hair around that hairline in 6 weeks when she comes back in to have her roots done. So I'm always working just slightly off her natural hairline at the front when I'm foiling. What I'm doing here, I'm actually placing temple to temple, a triangular shape across that top section, and I'm working to just around the crown area. So this one's going in first. We can press play. I get that one out of the way, and then I'm going just behind the ear, and I'm taking that triangle right up to the top section, to the crown area, so that triangle meets my top section. And then I do the same on the other side, so you can just see there. So I'm working on quite a deep triangle right behind the ear, and this is what the sectioning looks like, and this is the placement. So if we can just pause this for a minute now, just so I can tell you how these first sections go in. All I'm doing here is applying 3 foils through the back of the hair. So we're not doing any heavy foiling through the back of the hair. I hear it so much with stylists where they say they're putting 40, 50 foils in the back of the head. Why? It's colour heavy. It takes forever to apply that colour. And if you haven't quoted your price properly, your profit margin's gone down the sink as soon as you've rinsed this colour off. So the first foil that I'm applying is around the crown area. So I'm working on a curve. So I've got 2 foils going on my crown on a curve. I'm going on a zigzag parting with a really, really deep back comb. Okay. So that then, I'm going to just zoom in because I'm as blind as a bat so I can see my screen. Okay, so we've got 1 deep zigzag, horizontal weave just above the occipital bone. So I'm working above where the head just curves round so that it's maximum impact. So I'm working on areas that we can see, okay? Deep back combs for a seamless blend, and make sure you saturate with your lightener whilst feathering up towards the root. Okay, so we're going to do 2 of those. The last foil goes just underneath, and this is now a tip out. So I'm taking a section from underneath those 2 foils, nice big deep weave, big back comb, and then lots of lightener from, I'd say, the mid-lengths down to the ends, and then feather it all the way back up. Okay, so if we press play, you'll actually see me applying this now. So these tip outs are absolutely brilliant. I find that if I'm placing one of these tip outs on this 3rd section, I'm getting maximum light pop without actually having to overly saturate with too many foils. So when working on a fragile head of hair like I am with Lara's, this really helps. So you can see there, I've got a deep zigzag. I'm slicing straight through, like so. That zigzag's really going to help with your blend as well. So if you haven't done anything like this before, this is a bit of a game changer. Really big back comb. Now I use a colour board as well when I'm colouring, so I like to make sure I've got full saturation. So you can see there I've gone from sort of the mid-lengths up towards the root, fully saturating. and then just a light fold, and then moving on to my next section. Again, deep zigzag, lift away that top section. So that piece of hair that I've just moved out of the way is going to give me a really nice blend over the top at the crown as well. I'm not colouring directly onto that crown area. Everything's all about keeping a seamless, fluid blend with that colour, where you're not then going to have to go in with root stretches and things like that afterwards again. So I'm always thinking about being really, really smart with where I'm applying my colour and how I'm going to maximise my gloss at the end for maximum impact, but less work. Now, this third foil that I was talking about, you can see I'm just moving that hair out of the way in between those two foils. I've backcombed just underneath it. And it is just a light tease, guys. I'm not backcombing as if she's going on a night out. This is just to tease the hair out of the way. You can see there loads and loads of saturation. And we're done with the back section. That's it. Now, if we can just pause again, just while I talk about where the next sections are going to be. All I'm going to do now is apply 2 foils through my side triangle. Now, what I will say about this is I will adapt my foil placements within these triangles depending on what I'm trying to create. Excuse me. So for this particular client, this is what I would call my maintenance appointment. I'm applying 1 foil at the hairline. So I'm going to do a classic weave following the shape of the hairline. We can press play again. And then the second foil, I'm working on a zigzag weave with a soft back comb, feathering that lightener up towards the root. Saturation's key to an even lift with this one. And I'm working just along where the top of that section meets the top triangle. So you can actually see there with Lara's hair how absolutely fragile it is. One really good tip with this one as well is if you are applying a root colour in between these foils, which I do with this particular one, I always go a couple of shades lighter around the hairline. So that's going to, again, give me that pop-in face frame without having to do a ton of foil work at the front. So I actually apply a level 10 around Lara's hairline and a level 7 everywhere else in between those foils. Last foil on this section again, back combed out the way, slice straight the way through. Deep back comb. And then again, placing on the mid-lengths, feathering up towards the root. And then folding that foil up. And then you just repeat again on the other side. Always try and follow the shape of the client's hairline. So my sectioning on the sides will kind of differ depending on how much hair the client's got around the front, the shape of the hairline, where the ear is, how high the recess is around the temple area. And I would say I can probably get these foils in around about 15 minutes. So it really is a time smart appointment. If you're running a busy column, these go-to techniques really do make a huge difference. Again, mid-lengths, feathering up. Saturating through those ends. And I'm actually using Redken Flash Lift with 20 volume on this client. Right, okay, let's go on to this top section. So this is where we're going to start working on our final foils. So 1 foil through the front section, temple to temple, is going to create our natural face frame. So it's a classic weave, okay, with a really soft back comb, and we're going to just go horizontally straight the way through that front section. Again, I'm aware where Lara's hair is really fine, so I'm going to drop those fine hairs out of the way. You might find sometimes with a client that they'll say, oh, I want it really bright at the front. My main goal is making sure that client's still got hair next time she comes in. So if they have got really short hair at the front, where they've maybe got a little bit of natural breakage, where they've over straightened, or even if they've just got a really fragile hairline, please explain to them that you would much rather leave that hair out of the way and foil just behind it, then foil it out, and number one, make it look like breakage. So they're going to be on the phone within a week complaining that you've broken the hair off when you haven't. And actually, number two, that really, really soft bit of hair that you leave out at the front creates a tiny bit of depth, which will actually make then in turn that hairline pop that little bit more. So one classic weave through the front. We can press play again. Ensure your weave is clean and even. Okay, make sure your lightener's fully saturated, and then you're going to paint from the mid-length to the top and then feather up towards the root. So sorry, mid-length to your ends, that should say, and then feather up towards the root. And I have just zigzagged this very, very slightly as well. So everything that I'm working on today is zigzag sectioning. You can see I've actually just gone behind Lara's natural hairline. I've left quite a bit of hair out round the front. Again, because I'm hitting that with a root tint later on, that's going to give me that little bit of extra pop as well. But even if you were leaving that natural on that root, you will still get a really nice effect with this. And then that's it for the very front of the hair. Now we're going to go onto our top triangle. So just so you know as well, I always work left to right with my clients when I'm colouring. I do this, number one, if I've got an assistant working with me, so that if I've got somebody checking on my colour as it's developing, that assistant always knows where I've started. So whenever I'm doing any colour work, I will always start on the left, whether that's the front or the back. Okay, some pro tips for you. Okay, so softly tease the hair and feather the lightener towards the root to blend. I talk about this a lot. I've talked about it on every single slide. I'm working off the client's parting on this one. So you're going to just double check when you get to this section where your client likes to wear their hair. Purely for the fact that if you work on a middle parting and you're only applying 4 foils through the top of this, I guarantee you will end up with a block of colour on one side that doesn't blend on the other. So work on the client's parting. I've zigzagged that parting as well, so that's going to create a soft blend for me. Okay, my final 4 foils are placed horizontally through that top section using deep zigzag weaves. Because I'm working horizontally, I'm going to get maximum coverage. Okay, so that's why I'm only using 4 foils, because I'm zigzagging, I'm taking the worry out of it looking blocky, and I'm also taking the fear away from creating stripes. The zigzags are going to create that blend without you having to even think about it. And then when you are applying your lightener from your mid-lengths and feathering up towards the root, even though you're fully saturating again, it just creates a real softness that when you've brushed all of that out later on, it is seamless. My clients who don't have a root application appointment in between will generally get 12 to 16 weeks out of a colour like this. Okay, we can press play. Some other pro tips for you with this, whilst you're actually looking at this section and before it goes on to the live bit of me painting, I sometimes need to apply some tip outs like I did at the back through this top section, so you can actually do that as well. So here you go, you can see Lara's sectioning pattern on the top, nice big zigzag. Back comb. And then applying the lightener. You want to make sure you can still see the foil through the hair. If it's too thick, you're going to have problems with your lift. So although I'm taking big chunky back combs, big chunky weave, sorry, and back combing it out, I've still got to make sure I can see that foil on the underneath. Your lightener's got way too much work to do if you can't see that foil. Final foil on this side. This is a great technique to use for blondes, for bronze, for brunettes. We've obviously got, you know, the new colour of the season is mocha mousse this year. So people are, you know, we've got lots of clients asking for brunettes with sort of like mushroomy colours and things like that going through. This is a fabulous technique for creating something like that. And reds as well. If you go onto my Instagram page at KF Hair Education at Instagram, you'll see that I've done some reds recently. This is a technique that's very similar to the one that I use when I'm doing my reds, when I want like a multi-layered vibrant colour. And then again, final foil through the top. Now, I have the luxury of working one-to-one with my clients, so I don't have a client in between, because I currently don't have an assistant. So what I would always do once I finish foiling, and that's not an opportunity for me to go and get a coffee just yet, I will go back to my left-hand side. I'll check my first foils. I will slide out any foils that I need to, remove as much of the lightener as I can, and then I will leave the client with a drink. But I will kind of go back and forwards every 10 minutes to keep checking those foils and slide them out as I'm going along. And then you can just see now, all I'm doing is a really simple commercial root application in between those foils. I'm using a really sort of neutral level 7 on this. I think it might actually be a 7.5. Just applying on that root area. I give it a good brush down as well. So I have Hedgehog, the bamboo brushes. They're like a flat detangling brush. Once I've got all of this on, I'll give it a really, really good brush through to make sure that that root application's blended. And then around Lara's hairline, I've actually used a level 10. So I'm creating lots and lots of pop through that front area. So it gives the illusion that I've put maybe 4 or 5 foils on either side of that hairline, and again around the top section, temple to temple. Looks quite messy, but it's more about what it looks like afterwards. And don't be scared as well of actually with this painting over that backcombed area. It will brush out and it will blend really, really well. Some people ask me a lot, what happens if we just pause for a second so you can see the after. This is what it looks like. So I've applied that root colour in between those foils. It's mushed in. It looks messy as anything, and you will have a heart attack watching it. So I do suggest you trust the process. But because you've teased everything and because you've feathered everything, when you blend it all through, it's almost like I've created a natural low light going through there as well. You can actually see from that back section as well, that one tip out through the bottom below those 2 curved foils. Look at the difference that that's made to that head of hair. It's absolutely incredible, and it genuinely does look like that, guys. So I don't use any sort of ring lights or anything like that. I don't use filters. That's just natural daylight in the window taken with an iPhone, and that's it. You can press play again. Her hair looks thicker as well, don't you think? Right, okay, if you just pause for a second so that people can take a screenshot of this. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me today. I'm really, really passionate about passing on commercial techniques to the everyday hairdresser, techniques that hopefully are going to give you the confidence behind the chair to create beautiful bespoke hair for your clients. It's like I say, it's not about working cheaply, it's about working really smart and giving your clients a really bespoke, expensive service that's going to give you maximum profit behind your chair. This is your formula breakdown. So I use in total 30 grams of flash lift lightener with 45 grams of 20 volume pro oxide developer. For the hairline root, I did 15 grams of 10 double O with 20 volume. The global root was a 7081. So the A is like a brunette. So it's a brunette ash on a blue base with 20 volume. And then the gloss at the end, so there was no root tap or anything like that at the end, no root smudges or anything. It was just a simple 1003. And so a neutral gold with 7 vol mixed 1 to 1.5. And that was on for about 20 minutes. Obviously, bond builders are a must, you know, K18. I always use a deep penetrating reconstructor for extra protein if I need it. And then cuticle sealer. So we're making sure that we're closing that colour service down, sending the client out technically with hair that's in better condition than when she walked in, even though you've had a lightening service. And the total appointment time, we can press play again. So total appointment time for this is 2.5 hours from the client coming in to the client leaving, and that's including photographs and a time for a chat and a brew and a biscuit. And that is it, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed that. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat. I'd like to talk, if I've got some time, Nicola, just about how I would price quote that as well.
Yeah. So first of all, Kelly, that was absolutely fantastic. And I think, you know, we've had a couple of comments here already that says great information. Thank you, Kelly. And Catherine has said, thank you. You're never too old to learn, and some continuing thank yous. And one of the things that, I mean, I was mesmerized by that is, you know, like I think Catherine says, never too old to learn. Whether you're a seasoned stylist already and a teacher, I think you really gave some valuable information there that you can adapt into. That these are industry techniques, aren't they?
Absolutely.
But also, if you're a student watching this, or if you are going to teach level 2 and level 3 students, this would fit in really nicely into the qualification where they have to do demonstration on partial highlighting technique. And what a, you know, industry current technique. And I do follow you, so I do see that you share some amazing stuff. And we've had loads of people saying it was brilliant, so thank you. And also had a question saying, would you use that technique on finer hair?
Absolutely. So this technique it was born from a need as a hairdresser. I was a busy stylist. So pre-COVID, I was in the salon, in the pit, working a double column, sometimes with 3 clients on the go at the same time. And I needed something that I could just go to. And I just started practicing sort of sectioning patterns, found out what worked and what didn't. And this one with the triangles, what I find is you can adapt it to any head of hair. It's all about your creative flair. So it doesn't matter whether you've got the densest head of hair or the finest head of hair. You would just adjust your weaves, really. You'd adjust, maybe you'd leave a little bit more depth between those foils. So where I applied those 2 curved foils at the crown, if there's no hair at the crown, because we know some clients at a certain age especially with menopausal hair, the hair can just disappear around at the crown. So I might only apply 1 foil there and 1 tip out. If it's somebody with a lot thicker hair, then I might need to do double that or even triple. So I'm very much, this is why it's like for you guys who are watching who are students, it's really important that you pre-section off the hair. Don't just start at the back and start working your way up. You will be there all day and you'll do way too much work and you just set yourself up for disappointment. So sectioning off is the main thing, because it almost then opens the canvas so that you can place with purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And we've also had somebody say that was great information and it would really help their level 3s become more commercial. And again, I think that that's such an important part, that we are not just teaching technique for technique's sake. That technique has a purpose, which is obviously still getting a fantastic overall result, but obviously making them more commercial and industry ready. And then you've got a couple of minutes if you want to just talk about your price and how you would price this.
First of all, I will say, if you've got your phones with you, go onto Instagram and give us a follow on KF Hair Education, and then also Solstice_Business Academy. So I've got 2 branches of my businesses. I've got a business with my business partner Meg Piper, and we teach business, the behind the chair business stuff, the boring stuff that's actually going to make you some money. And then on the KF Hair Education, that is where the techniques are in there. There's loads of demos on there. There is so much content on there. But I wanted to touch a little bit on price quoting and consultation with you today, because it doesn't matter how good you are as a colorist or as a cutter or as a barber. If you aren't nailing your consultations and your price quoting, what's the point? Okay. You know, I am really creative. I live and breathe my job. Do I want to get out of bed in the morning to do it for free? Absolutely not. Do I want at least to pay myself a national minimum wage per hour for every hour that I've worked behind the chair? Yes, I absolutely do. And I would like to pay myself a bit more. So it's all about, if you've got any pads and papers, please write this down. Quoting with confidence. So quoting with confidence is really simple. All you need to know is what the cost of your product is. So what service are you going to be doing on that client, and how much product are you going to be using? How much is your cost of business? So if you're renting a chair, for instance, how much is it costing you to rent that chair and get into the salon? How much do you want to pay yourself? So how many hours work are you actually going to be doing for that service? And then what profit you want on top of it that you're going to put in the bank to grow your business. Now, if you're employed, the tips I'm going to give you in terms of price quoting is be really transparent with your clients, okay? Ask them if they've got a budget. Find out what sort of work they want to have done on that head of hair. price quote at the beginning and explain your booking and cancellation policies. So before you even start, this needs to go right at the very beginning, so that they're fully aware of what contracts they're going to be entering into with you, and get that done first. So get sort of the uncomfortable conversation about money out of the way first. And it's really simple, Nicola. If I was quoting you, you'd come into the salon, you'd sit down with me, we'd go through booking terms and cancellation policies first. I've got a lengthy consultation process then where we talk about what is possible with your hair within the realms of safety and what we can actually achieve. And then we'll go through it. And then I would say to you, right, okay, so you're going to be coming in for a big blonding service with me in 6 weeks' time. That's going to be, I don't know, let's say my current price for that is £290 currently. Are you okay with that? There's going to be one of two answers, yes or no. Okay, if it's a no, then we go back to the drawing board and we say, right, okay, so what we've discussed is going to not be achievable. But what, are you working on a budget? Let's see what we can do. I promise I will always create something beautiful for you that's within a budget. What you will find is most of the time, 99.99% of the time, the client will absolutely go, yeah, whatever. I'll pay whatever for it. Because you've gone through that process and you've managed their expectations right at the start. Nobody wants to be slapped with a £200 bill after a 4-hour service when they've not been told what they're paying. Okay, so that's where I come from. All of my work, I will never ever quote. I will never take on a job, number one, without a consultation. And for you students that are watching today, I know full well how boring that consultation form is that we have to fill out when we're doing an assessment. But I cannot tell you how important that is. If you want that pair of Louboutins and you want that designer handbag and you want to be driving around in a Range Rover, that consultation will arm you with the ability to be able to create that profit margin on the end of it. I know it's boring, but I have a consultation class that I teach that takes the bore out of it. That's your inroads to having a really successful business. No complaints, no redos, and a healthy profit margin off the back. So
excellent. Kelly, your passion for training for this industry is bursting through the screen.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing all your very wise words and insight there. For everybody that's joining us today or watching the recording later, we will be sharing Kelly's details along with Anthony Laban's from earlier on this morning. And please give them a follow on Instagram. Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time to put together such a wonderful presentation.
You're very welcome.
Really great value in it. So thank you. And I know you're about to go back behind the chair. So
I've got a client in at 12 for this service that I've just demoed. So I'm actually going to go and do this exact service today on my next client. So thank you all so much. If anybody has any questions, please reach out to me on Instagram. I'm always in the inboxes. So if there's no silly questions that you can ask me, please reach out. I'd love to chat a bit more with some of you and try and help if I can.
Super. All right. Thanks ever so much, Kelly.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I just want to say one of the comments that we got in here was from Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa says that she's an independent endpoint assessor and consultation is one of the areas that apprentices fail on.
Yeah.
So that kind of really putting that over, Kelly, is just so important, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Now, actually, Lisa, if you go onto my Instagram page, I'll actually share it on my stories now. I think I've done a couple of slides on the importance of consultation. If you would like me to put some stuff together or have a chat with you separately about maybe having a chat with students and things like that to explain the importance of this. I think the fundamental problem is that it's glazed over too quickly. I think we need to kind of niche down a little bit more on like, this is, get this right, nail this bit, and the rest is easy. So I would absolutely love that. I will share some consultation tips on my stories today for you all.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Kelly. And Lisa just put back in, she said, brilliant, thank you. And yes, please. Absolutely. So that's fantastic. I look
forward to having a chat with you. Brilliant.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, so we're going to move on. I mean, we genuinely have had two fantastic guests this morning, and we're getting lots of thank yous. Naomi, Sharon, Alison, Lisa, as we said, and Janie and Mary as well. So brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So just to kind of update you on some industry dates, we've got the AHT awards, and you can see those on the screen there. And also, if you're interested in entering for those, you've got the QR code there. And I'm just going to hand back now to Nicola, because Nicola, you are doing some judging this weekend, aren't you?
Yeah. So great to see actually today that on the collective call, we have people from Scotland, we have Wales, and we have England. So reaching almost all of the nations there. So that's great to see. And you'll see from this that VTCT Skills are supporting the AHT competitions across the whole of the country. So we've been in Scotland, we had Wales on Monday, Monday this week, and then this weekend I'm off to sunny Blackpool because I'm judging at the Northwest on Monday. So if anybody's entering, then good luck with that. But you can also see that we will be supporting throughout the whole of the country. And so all of the regional entries, if you are in them, then good luck, and you will be finding out from also follow up from this how to do direct entry if you want to go straight to the national finals. You'll see a representative from VTCT Skills at every AHT event, and we wish everybody the best of luck.
Excellent, thank you. Just an update now on the collective live events that Nicola and I have been doing. Just to mention our supporters that we've had with Denman, Cloud9 and Hairdressers Journal. And we've got a couple of new dates for you. So, well, we've had Reading College in the calendar. That's the 12th of March. But on the 8th of April, we are going to the Nations, and we're going to North Wales to Coleg Gwent, and that will be on the 8th of April. Just as a reminder, all of our dates for events for the Collective Online and also the Collective Live are on the VTCT events page. So if you want to go in there and you want to book on, then please do. We would love to see you.
Can I just add from that if you do head over to the events page, the media page, we also launched the Beauty Collective, which has been running for, I think, 2 months now. So for your beauty colleagues out there, please share with them that we do run the collective online for our beauty partners as well. And also newly launched is the VTCT Collective for the early years. So we are spreading this collective love, this industry insight and valuable CPD across all of our sectors. So please head over to the media page and also tell all your colleagues in all the other areas of your colleges and training providers as well.
Yeah, and just to emphasize there, if you found this morning's collective online helpful, which I know you will have done, please share it with your colleagues. The more that we can get to join. And also, as we've noticed, we've got some students with us today, so it's really brilliant to have you with us as well, because you guys are the future of our industry, and we really do appreciate that. If you want to follow Nicola and I, these are our email addresses, Instagram and LinkedIn. And as we always say, we would love to hear your suggestions. If you've got any feedback for us, if you've got any guests that you feel that would be really a good fit for us, then please let us know. And equally as well, if you think that you would be a good fit, please give us a shout out, because this to us is really about community, and we really want you to feel part of it. So if you can give us some feedback, we would really appreciate that. And finally, Nicola.
Yeah, next meeting. So we're back next month. We will be announcing shortly who our hair and barbering guest speakers are, and that will be on the 27th of March. Please remember that if you're not available on the 27th of March, you can always still register for the meeting, and you will receive all the information and the link to watch it at your own convenience. All it leaves me to say is that if you are on half term, thank you for joining us. If you are about to go on half term, have a wonderful time, whatever you planned, and we look forward to seeing you again next month.
Yeah, and just to say, fantastic guests this morning, Kelly and Anthony, really brilliant there. But as Nicola said as well, we really, really appreciate you joining us, particularly if you're on holiday this week. Have a great rest of time, take some time out, enjoy it with your loved ones. And we look forward to seeing you in March, or if you're going to be joining us on the Collective Live and in Reading, then we would love to see you as well. So big thanks.